June 11th, 1969, Berea City, Vietnam. The day was like any other, but for the young soldiers arriving, it marked the beginning of a harrowing journey. The air hung heavy, thick with humidity and the stench of decay. The jungle seemed alive, breathing with an ominous presence that weighed on every step. A young soldier, fresh from training, stepped off the transport, his senses assaulted by the sights and sounds of a war zone. The cacophony of distant gunfire and the murmur of anxious voices filled the air. This was no routine deployment. This was the tunnel, a dark, claustrophobic labyrinth where danger lurked in every shadow. He was a tunnel rat now, tasked with the perilous job of navigating these underground mazes, searching for the enemy and hidden traps. The base was a hive of activity, but an underlying tension crackled in the air. Every soldier knew the risks, and the recent losses weighed heavily on their minds. Just days earlier, a platoon had been decimated by a Viet Cong booby trap, the dreaded jumping jack mine. The memory of the explosion was still fresh, a grim reminder of the ever-present danger. It earned its name from the way it leaped from the earth before detonating, showering its victims with shrapnel. 3 dead, 24 wounded. The survivors bore the scars, both physical and emotional. The new recruit saw the aftermath firsthand. The devastation was overwhelming, a brutal introduction to the realities of war. A mangled personnel carrier, twisted metal and burning rubber, a testament to the unseen enemy's deadly efficiency. The sight was seared into his memory, and then he saw it. His first glimpse of war's true cost. The faces of his comrades, etched with pain and fear, a stark reminder of the human toll of conflict. Beneath the verdant jungles of Vietnam lay another world, a world of darkness, claustrophobia, and ever-present danger. The tunnels were more than mere holes in the ground. They were an intricate network, a subterranean city that snaked through the earth. Within these tunnels, the enemy moved unseen, launching surprise attacks, planting deadly traps, and vanishing back into the earth before their presence was even detected. The tunnels were their sanctuary, their lifeline, their secret weapon. The tunnel rats, a breed apart, volunteers who stepped forward when others shied away. Their mission, to descend into the darkness, to hunt the enemy in their lair. Armed with little more than a pistol, a knife, and a flashlight, they ventured into the unknown. Each step forward could be their last. The darkness concealed not only the enemy, but a menagerie of deadly creatures. Venomous snakes, giant centipedes, disease-carrying rats. Their every sense was on high alert, their nerves stretched taut. Before the Americans ever set foot in the humid jungles of Vietnam, the Viet Minh, the predecessors to the Viet Cong, were learning a brutal lesson in asymmetrical warfare. They were fighting the French, a colonial power with superior firepower and resources. The only way to fight back, to survive, was to become shadows, to strike from the darkness and melt away before the enemy could react. The tunnels were their answer. Initially crude, rudimentary, they were a testament to desperation as much as ingenuity. When the Americans arrived, they found themselves facing an enemy they barely understood, fighting on a battlefield that defied conventional tactics. The tunnels were not just hideouts. They were an integral part of the Viet Cong's strategy, their lifeline in a war of attrition. The tunnels provided more than just shelter. They allowed the Viet Cong to control the battlefield, to choose when and where to strike. They would emerge from hidden trapdoors, unleashing a storm of bullets and grenades, then vanish before air support could arrive. The tunnels were a nightmare for the Americans. Imagine for a moment the experience of a tunnel rat. You are crawling through a narrow passage, the air thick with humidity and the stench of decay. Your world is reduced to the dim circle of your flashlight beam, your heart pounding in your ears. Every sense is on high alert, straining for the slightest sound, the faintest movement that could signal the enemy's presence. The darkness is all-consuming, pressing in on you, amplifying every fear. You are alone, cut off from your comrades. Your only lifeline, the thin thread of your courage. Not every soldier had the stomach for tunnel work. It took a special breed, a volunteer willing to face his fears in the suffocating blackness of the Viet Cong tunnels. These men were not chosen. They chose this harrowing duty, driven by a potent cocktail of courage, camaraderie, and perhaps a touch of morbid curiosity. Their training was as unconventional as their mission. At the Army School of Military Engineering, they learned the deadly arts of mine detection and demolition, how to disarm booby traps, and how to navigate the labyrinthine tunnels. They learned to control their fear, to push past the primal instinct to flee from the darkness, the claustrophobia, the ever-present threat lurking just beyond the reach of their flashlights. The order would come, usually at dusk, when the jungle was alive with unseen creatures and the shadows stretched long and menacing. Tunnel rat needed. A hush would fall over the men, a mixture of respect and relief, as the volunteer stepped forward, his face a mask of grim determination. He would check his equipment, a .45 caliber pistol, a K-bar knife, a flashlight, a few grenades, and a prayer. Then, with a deep breath, he would disappear into the earth, swallowed by the darkness of the tunnel. The air grew thick and heavy. Many tunnel rats returned from their missions haunted by what they had seen, what they had done, their minds scarred by the darkness they had faced. The tunnel narrowed, the air thick and heavy with the smell of damp earth and decay. The tunnel rat, his heart pounding in his ears, inched forward, his flashlight beam cutting through the oppressive darkness. The silence was broken only by his own ragged breathing, the rasp of his fatigues against the rough earth. His flashlight beam danced across the tunnel walls, revealing nothing but more darkness, more suffocating earth. He thought of the men above enjoying the twilight, unaware of the claustrophobic hell he was enduring. His hand brushed against something slick and cold. He recoiled instinctively, his heart leaping into his throat. It was only a root, slick with moisture. He pushed onward, deeper into the bowels of the earth, each step forward an act of defiance against the darkness, against the unseen enemy that awaited him. Section 2. The Enemy Within. The Viet Cong were masters of their subterranean domain. They knew every twist and turn of the tunnels, every hidden trapdoor, every deadly surprise that lay in wait for the unwary. They were ghosts, vanishing into the darkness, leaving behind a trail of fear and uncertainty. But the tunnels held other dangers, creatures that predated the war, that thrived in the darkness. Giant centipedes, their venomous bites capable of inflicting excruciating pain. Rats, their fur crawling with disease, their eyes glinting in the flashlight beam. The tunnel rat knew that these creatures were as much his enemy as the Viet Cong themselves. Section 3. Fear as a weapon. The Viet Cong understood the power of fear, how it could cripple the enemy, sap their morale, turn their courage to ashes. They used it as a weapon, as potent as any bullet or grenade. The tunnels themselves were a testament to this. A physical manifestation of the unseen enemy's ability to strike from the shadows, to vanish without a trace. Booby traps were their specialty, their ingenuity matched only by their ruthlessness. The tunnel rat knew that every step could be his last, that death could come at any moment, swift and merciless. Section 1. The unseen enemy. The tunnel rat pressed onward, his flashlight beam cutting a thin swathe through the oppressive blackness. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of damp earth and decay. He could taste the fear in his own mouth, metallic and acrid. He had been crawling for what felt like an eternity, his body aching, his mind numb. The silence was almost unbearable, broken only by the rasp of his fatigues against the rough earth, the thudding of his own heart in his ears. He strained to hear any sound that might betray the enemy's presence. The scrape of a boot on rock, the clink of metal on metal, the soft whisper of Vietnamese. He knew they were out there, somewhere in the labyrinthine darkness, waiting for him. The tunnel twisted and turned, a subterranean maze designed to disorient, to confuse. The tunnel opened into a small chamber, the air slightly less stifling. The tunnel rat paused, his flashlight beams sweeping across the rough-hewn walls. He could make out the remnants of a fire. A blackened pot overturned on the dirt floor. The Viet Cong had been here recently. He moved cautiously, his senses on high alert. He checked for tripwires, pressure plates, any sign of a booby trap. His flashlight beam fell on a discarded sandal, a faded photograph of a young woman and a child. A pang of sadness, of empathy, surprised him. These were not monsters, not demons, but men fighting for their homeland, just as he was. He picked up the photograph, studying the faces frozen in time. He knew he couldn't linger. The enemy could return at any moment. The tunnel rat emerged from the earth, blinking against the sudden glare of the sun. He was covered in sweat and grime, his fatigues ripped, his body trembling with exhaustion. He had been underground for hours, an eternity in that claustrophobic hell. But he had survived. He had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. He made his way back to his unit, his mind still reeling from the experience. He had seen things down there, things that would stay with him long after the war was over. He was a tunnel rat. The Vietnam War ended, the jungles slowly reclaiming the battlefields, the tunnels swallowed once more by the earth. Nature began to heal the scars left by years of conflict, but the memories of those who fought remained vivid and raw. But for the tunnel rats, the war never truly ended. These brave men who crawled through the claustrophobic darkness faced dangers that few could imagine. They carried the memories, the nightmares, the scars of their service in the darkness, long after the guns fell silent. The psychological toll was immense, and many struggled to find peace in the years that followed. History remembers the grand strategies, the major battles, the political machinations. The names of generals and politicians are etched in history books, their decisions analyzed and debated. But the story of the tunnel rats is often relegated to the footnotes, a grim chapter in a brutal war. Their contributions, though critical, are often overshadowed by the larger narrative. Yet, their courage was unmatched, their sacrifices immeasurable. They faced the unknown with a resolve that is hard to fathom, driven by a sense of duty and loyalty to their comrades. They were the unsung heroes, the volunteers who faced their fears in the suffocating blackness, who took on the most dangerous missions without hesitation, who ventured into the unknown depths of the Viet Cong tunnels, navigating booby traps and ambushes, knowing that each step could be their last, Their bravery was not just in facing the enemy, but in confronting the darkness within themselves. They were driven by duty, by camaraderie, by a sense of purpose that transcended the horrors they faced. The bonds they formed in those tunnels were unbreakable, forged in the crucible of war. Their story is a testament to the human spirit's resilience, its capacity for courage and sacrifice in the face of unimaginable fear. It is a story of ordinary men who did extraordinary things. It is a story that deserves to be told, remembered, and honored. The legacy of the tunnel rats is one of bravery, sacrifice, and an indomitable will to survive. The tunnel rats returned home, forever changed by their experiences. These brave men who had navigated the dark, claustrophobic tunnels of Vietnam faced a new kind of darkness upon their return. The battles they fought underground were unlike any other, and the memories of those harrowing days and nights stayed with them. etched into their minds and souls. Some found solace in the company of their fellow veterans, men who understood the darkness they had faced, the nightmares that haunted their sleep. These reunions were more than just gatherings. They were lifelines, moments of shared understanding and mutual support. In the presence of those who had walked the same perilous paths, they found a semblance of peace. Others struggled to readjust to civilian life, the scars of the underground running deep. The transition from the war-torn tunnels to the everyday world was jarring and often overwhelming. The skills that had kept them alive in combat seemed out of place in a world that had moved on without them. The psychological toll was immense. The weight of their experiences bore down on them, manifesting in ways that were both seen and unseen. Anxiety, depression, and a pervasive sense of unease became constant companions. Post-traumatic stress disorder, once dismissed as shell shock or battle fatigue, cast a long shadow over their lives. The medical community began to understand the depth of their suffering. But for many veterans, the recognition came too late. The struggle to find effective treatment and support was an uphill battle. The flashbacks, the nightmares, the hypervigilance, the survivor's guilt. These were the invisible wounds of war, the scars that time could not heal. Each day was a fight to reclaim a sense of normalcy, to find moments of calm amidst the storm raging within. Many tunnel rats found it difficult to talk about their experiences, even to their loved ones. The words to describe their ordeal often eluded them, and the fear of being misunderstood kept them silent. Their families, though supportive, could never fully grasp the depth of their trauma. The darkness they had seen, the things they had done, were not easily shared. These memories were locked away, too painful to revisit, too complex to explain. The burden of these unspoken stories weighed heavily on their hearts. They carried the weight of their memories in silence, their pain hidden behind a stoic facade. The dog tags they clutched were not just identifiers, but symbols of the lives they had led and the comrades they had lost. But their story is a reminder that war's true cost is measured not only in casualties, but in the invisible wounds inflicted on the human soul. The photographs and mementos they kept were not just relics of the past, but reminders of the price they had paid. It is a reminder of the debt owed to those who serve in silence, who carry the scars of battle long after the guns fall silent. Their sacrifices, both seen and unseen, are a testament to their courage and resilience. We honor them not just for their service, but for their enduring strength in the face of unimaginable adversity.